Boom. Welcome to another episode of Clean Breakthrough, powered by, not brought to you by, powered by Greenville Transitions. In today's episode, what should we call it? Who's the owner?
Who's the owner? Who
What's
owns
the owner
what?
do?
I want to speak to the manager.
Yeah, I want to speak to the manager.
Does he live here?
So Lucas and I were just talking about these big treatment conglomerates, and a very helpful hint or tip for parents as you're looking into treatment or sober livings. And Chat GPT can be your best friend here. Any AI, whichever AI you use, but you can offer a prompt to it and say, who is the owner of blank? And it can lead you down a road of who the facility is owned by. If you're looking into substance use disorder treatment, transitional living programs, and it is a very interesting rabbit hole you can go down. So, what were we figuring out, Lucas?
Yeah, so we looked up three different treatment centers that were like the first ones we could think of. And it was me doing it, and I'm not as plugged in as David on kind of how things are shifting in that world. So I was just throwing out places that I know that maybe we've gotten a referral from or referred to in the past and went looking into it just to see who owns those programs. And it looked like out of the first three or four that I came up with, it went to two different like health conglomerates that both own many different treatment centers. And then I asked who owns them, and they're actually owned by the same private equity firm located far away from a lot of these treatment centers. And so then I thought, well, maybe this private equity firm has like a heart for recovery and is like really invested in that, and like that's kind of their thing. But when I looked into it, I saw that they own, healthcare stuff, senior living, beauty products, luxury brands, construction stuff, home building stuff. I mean, pretty diversified in a lot of different sectors, which I think just is interesting for me of like, what is the point of a private equity firm? And I would feel that it is to make money, to generate revenue, increase income. And so in the purpose of buying a company, you want a company that has good income. And I think are always looking at ways that that could be better. And unfortunately, and I mean, we've seen this, running a small mom and pop shop, that there are decisions that pop up on a day-to-day basis where you kind of sometimes have to choose, something might make more money, but it might not be the best thing for the clients in the house, or something might be the best thing for the clients in the house, but is going to cost money and hurt, any kind of bottom line, and really having to make some tough decisions around that stuff. And we believe always trying to do the best for the client in a way that makes sense where we can keep the lights on. I mean, I don't think you can do everything exclusively for the client and forget about, keeping the lights on, or else then we can't help anyone if we don't have a house to help people out in. So I guess that would be my concern around that, is just what are those people's motives and intentions from top down, of like, hey, increase revenue. Does that mean cut staff? Does that mean shorter days? And I think we've seen some programs over time that we kind of, heard they got bought out. And then you just kind of wait and watch and see that they go from private to very insurance driven. They go from out of network to in network with everyone. They go from niche age range to all age range. They go from gender specific to all genders. They go from 90 days, like no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that's what we believe in, to 30 days, 60 days, 15 days, whatever you want. Their structure loosens. They go from being a nicotine-free campus to having nicotine. And like, not any one of these things, I think, are that bad, and could also have different intentions and motives behind them of why they're doing it. But I think when you see the combination of a lot of these things, I mean, to me, it just looks like the writing is on the walls of, all right, how can we get the most people in, And I've heard that reasoning. I think you have too, David, from people where it's like, how do we help the most amount of people possible? And that kind of becomes the line around it.
Yeah.
And I think we've sat in a meeting with someone where we heard that,
Yep.
like, well, we just want to help the most amount of people possible. And the harder it is for people to get in the door because we only work with men, then we're not helping any women. We only work with this age range, then we're not helping anyone outside that age range. We only do out-of-network benefits, then we're not helping all these people with in-network benefits. But I think at some point it's like, what recovery service is truly geared towards just everyone? Men, women, 18-year-olds, 65-year-olds. I mean, I think in-network, out-of-network, and like payment stuff doesn't matter as much, but just like pretty much every demographic there is. We work with them all with the same program, and it works just as well for everyone. And maybe that's true and they figured it out. That just brings like a little bit of doubt to me of like,
That's
that
crazy.
just kind of seems weird, you know, that like that would just work for everyone the same.
Yeah. That's like Applebee's claiming to have the best Italian food and the best hamburgers and the best quesadillas and
Which normally, I mean, that's always been like a motto in my life is like, you know, beware getting a pizza at the wing spot, you know, or a burger at the chicken place, you know, like just because they serve a burger, also, if their thing is chicken, probably go there for chicken.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit and break it down. There's a couple of ties I want to make here. So what brings these big treatment centers that are bought up by this healthcare company, then this big venture capitalist or investment banker comes in and swoops up that whole healthcare company? They wouldn't do that if they didn't see that there was a lot of money on the table. You wouldn't get these big investment companies coming in, buying up other smaller companies unless they saw it and said, we can do business here. Two, what is a common denominator in all of those facilities that are run that way and that are owned by these big venture capitalists, these big healthcare companies? They're all in-network facilities with insurance. You can't name me one out-of-network facility, private facility that's under this umbrella. Because somewhere along the way, they've realized like, if we go in network with all of the major insurance carriers and we hit these insurance plans, squeeze them for everything, wring them out for everything we can get out of them, and then push this client through as soon as insurance says they're done, we can turn a really good profit here. And then it becomes a volume game. So, and I can speak from experience here because an out-of-network facility, a private facility, it's not a volume game. It is like created to maintain a really high quality level of care. And we're not pumping 40, 50, 60 people through groups. But when you go in network with all the insurance carriers, you have to. You're forced to become a volume player. So I would say that's one of the biggest changes I see happen. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something I've seen more and more each year is that kind of everybody's in network with everybody, can take any policy. And again, coincidentally, and it's no surprise, I mean, it just makes sense. As you see that happen, you also see the group sizes go up. You see that they add another group, they add another facility, because again, now you're getting less reimbursement from insurance than you would at a network. So now you need more people. I mean, it just kind of forces you into a volume approach. And I think if anybody, this is kind of a weird example, but I think about like public and private school, you know, and it's like public school, you could have really big class sizes. And like, what's the concern? Especially if you're coming from a private school background, and I went to both, is, you know, class sizes are going to be big. Is my loved one going to fall between the cracks? Are people going to be watching out to make sure that they don't fall too far behind, whatever? And I think then that's like the big claim to fame of private schools is like, hey, we have very small class sizes. There's more there's a higher teacher to student ratio. And so they're just going to get more care and attention.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Let's even break down what it means to go in network. because we've even looked into this. Like, what does that even mean for us as a company to go in network? Well, what it meant was is we go to the table with the insurance company, plug in any of your big insurance names to the scenario, and you kind of go to the table with them, and they want to slide over across the table a contract to you. That contract is an agreed upon rate of which they're going to pay you for your services. And it's always low. I can promise you no one ever looks at that number the first go round and they're like, yes, this is awesome. No. From that moment on, you sign that contract and you can negotiate. You can go back and forth on that cost per service. But regardless of what you land on, you sign that contract, you're no longer calling the shots on treatment. Now that insurance provider is telling you how many days you're going to get and when to move that person on out of the program. A provider that's not spending days with that client. And this is kind of what baffles me, and where I don't understand it is why the insurance companies haven't caught on to these venture capitalists, these investment bankers coming in, swooping up these big healthcare companies, and they're making tons of money on this. To me, because it seems like it's a flawed system too. Like it's not enough days to truly heal. They spit them out on the street whenever insurance is done paying, and guess what? Because they haven't healed, there's a high likelihood of relapse, and guess who's going to come back around to pay again? And a lot of these big treatment centers, I think, depend on repeat business, which is a darker path to go down.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's when we were talking about the other day where, you had brought up the example with like Edison and the light bulb, and that the light bulbs were lasting too long. And so the profits were going down.
Yeah. 2,500 hours. When they invented the light bulb, it was made to burn for 2,500 hours, and then it would burn out. And then they went down, they were like, we're not making enough profit here. Let's redo this. So they went back to the light bulb and they figured out how to make it only burn for 1,000 hours before it would burn out. And then you'd have to buy a new light bulb. So they say that's to be successful, really successful, you need to sell a lot. And in order to sell a lot, you have to create waste. That was the other big argument, is create waste. And you see it all over the place with our clothes. Like clothes have been made to deteriorate faster, to only be washed for 5 or 6 wash cycles, and then the colors are fading, and now you need a new one. Or your phone, your headphones, they have batteries that are sealed inside of them now that you can't get into the product to replace the battery. Now you've got to go get a whole new product. They're creating that waste so that they can sell you more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm convinced that is in-network treatment. And I'm baffled by how the insurance company hasn't caught on to that. That hey, this isn't a real solution, but we're going to pretend like it is. And they're going to come. I talked to a guy the other day who he had seen a client go through a facility 50 times. 50 times. Like, you should recognize that something's not working at this point. Honestly, by the 3rd time, but to put them through there 47 more is insane.
Yeah, that's such a bummer when you hear that kind of stuff. Or, I talked to someone at a detox before, and they said something similar of like, oh, we saw this person, like 12 times in a year. It's just like, man, at what point do you like kind of hold a line that like, hey, we have to do something different here? So like, where have they been going after the detox? Like, what's been the recommendation? And, I don't know, ask for something different of, okay, you've been doing outpatient after detox. Maybe this time you go inpatient after detox. When you get out of inpatient, you didn't do outpatient. Maybe now you do outpatient. After that, maybe you are just dead set on going back home. Maybe you do need to go to some kind of sober living for at least a little bit. There's like so many changes that you could make. And especially with that many times to play around with combinations, you're just like, man, 50 times. I mean, that's like every conceivable possible combination of like step down treatment that you could have and try. This type of sober living, that type of sober living, but I don't know. It gets to some point where you're just like, man, what are we doing?
Yeah. I've had close friends go work for these companies in like business development roles and marketing roles, and the amount of pressure that is put on them of like, hey, you better hit your numbers or you're done, or like, God forbid you drop 15% in 2 months, like you're done, and insert the next person who can get our numbers back up. Like at some point it just becomes this, it's all about the numbers game where, and this is where it's difficult of finding that line of yeah, some people just need all the help that they can get, and they need to be able to use their insurance and go in network. I would still argue, like, go find the in network program that hasn't sold to this huge company 2 times over. But I would like sell my kidney if I had to. I'd remortgage my house. I'd sell my car if I had to get my kid to a better quality facility over a quantity or volume based facility.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be a better, I mean, I guess it's not guaranteed that it's a better service just on that alone. But if you can find one that is smaller and quality, I think that's always going to be the best bet. And again, not even to say that like just because a place is quantity that you get like a terrible service, or that you don't hear great stuff from your therapist or your case manager there, or that you don't meet other peers that say something that sticks in your head for the rest of your life of just like, and like it really clicked for me when, you know, this guy that I was in a room with said this in like an in-house meeting when I was at that treatment center. Like you never know. It's just, I think if you want to put like the best foot forward and have the best chances, it would make sense that like the cookie cutter approach. I don't think the cookie cutter approach is based on results. I think it's based on profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like when you're saying like, how does the insurance company not like catch on to this? You know, and I think so many hands are like shaking each other at the same time that like insurance companies want everyone to go and network with them, like above all, because then they have a predictable rates that they're going to be charged by people, and they could say, okay, we're going to pay out this much to this place because they have this many beds, they have this much turnover in a year, and they get a lot of access to like your information at that point of like what you are doing, how many beds you have, how many people are going through with those insurance policies that they have. But to me, it almost feels like, I was trying to think of a better example, but I kept thinking of just like someone who's like gaining weight, and like at some point you gain so much weight that like you can't wipe your own behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's just things that like you can't see at that point, and it's tough to move around, and it just feels like this really big bloated system that is like so needlessly complicated that you almost can't see the forest for the trees, or however that saying goes. But like there's stuff that's just missed that doesn't really make sense, but it was just like the directive in the beginning of, hey, we got to get as many places to go and network with us as possible. And then treatment centers follow suit and say, okay, we need to get everyone to go in network, and then go volume approach. And it's like everyone just seems to kind of be doing it for like their own security and profitability at the end of the day. And it feels like just the individual person who walks into that place has kind of been lost in the kerfuffle of all of it. And again, not to say that nobody can get better at these places or anything like that, because tons of people do all the time.
Yeah, and you made a great point, and I want to reiterate it, is that there are like tons of really good people who are working on the ground floor oftentimes at all of these facilities, like the therapist care, the case managers care, the recovery coaches care. I'm just talking about as you start stepping your way up that ladder and realize that like this program in South Georgia is owned by investment bankers in Seattle. Like there's some big separation there, and they care about the top dollar, not about the person who's occupying a bed in that facility.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of I think that's just the nature of getting like separated from the care that you're providing also, right? Is like, all right, like I just own a company that owns all these companies, so like all I see are just numbers coming up where you're like, well, it lost $50,000 or $100,000 or $1.2 million this year. So like, all right, big changes need to happen immediately, but it's like all being triggered by losses, profits, things like that, rather than, I think that's like one of the best signs you could see. I mean, really, it just makes sense. And as we continued to look up programs, I was heartened by the fact that we saw a lot of programs that we were like, oh, maybe they're owned by somebody, and they weren't. And
Yeah.
they are privately owned. And even some of them said, you know, the owners also operate in executive leadership positions. Or I feel like that's the best thing that you could see, is to know that whoever started that place, whoever owns it, is actually plugged in and involved in the day to day. Not that they sit down with every person that comes to the program or anything like that. I mean, that's great. That's probably the best, but I don't know that that's as realistic.
Yeah. Going back to the insurance thing, I would imagine that an insurance company is better about collecting data than any other business on this earth right now. I would think that the computers and the ability that they have to collect data on people is through the roof. So I would just think that they're tracking like the success rate of these treatment centers and how many times one person, one policy is going through a detox center, a treatment center, and how they don't question that.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Yeah. You definitely think they would have like the best data of anyone on just like mental health care, specifically like addiction, mental health care, what outcomes look like for in-network facilities, out-of-network facilities. I guess they don't know anything about people who pay private pay. But it's even interesting, I mean, the amount of people that we'll work with that have an insurance plan, but then choose to not use it. You know, because whatever they were going to be able to use with that insurance plan wasn't going to be as good, in their opinion, as what they could just private pay for.
Mm-hmm.
I think that says something too. And obviously that's people who get to have that choice. And that's a privilege, you know, to be at a place where you could say, oh, we could use insurance or not. And I know for a lot of people, they just have to use whatever their insurance has.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the case with anything, not just mental health treatment. But I was just with a friend the other day who was born in Ireland, and they said that their parents were visiting. They didn't have health insurance in Ireland, so they had to private pay at the hospital to have their child. And because they private paid, they got like luxurious private room, staff waiting on them hand and foot, while all of the other Irish people who were using their insurance, they were like just a curtain separating them from the next person over who was having a baby, and like at different places in their process of pushing a baby out, and just chaos on that floor. And I would assume that it's the same in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it costs a lot. And it even made me think about a video I recently saw where a guy is like talking on the phone to the hospital. And he's like, hey, and from my understanding, I kind of looked into it. It didn't seem like it was a prank or like a fake video or anything like that. The guy was just posting it just to show like how insane it was. But so he films himself calling the hospital, and he says, you know, we got this one bill and it was lower, but it said we didn't have insurance. So we were hoping that once we sent in our insurance, it would be less, you know, once the insurance kicks in. But then when we sent our insurance in, they got a bill back that was more than what it was to not have insurance. And he was like, I just want to know, like, how the heck does that work? And they're like, well, at first we didn't think you had insurance, so you get all these breaks for not having insurance. But then once you said you do have insurance, now we're going to run it through insurance and you actually charge more. And he was like, can you just forget that I ever sent you the insurance? Just go back to that first number. And he's like, well, no, because you have insurance. And then he starts being a little more tongue in cheek of just like, all right, so what I should have done is canceled my insurance before I brought my daughter to the hospital for like a life-saving procedure. And the poor guy on the phone is just like, well, I don't know. I can't tell you, you know, and it's just like, this is just, I feel like everything to do with insurance seems to just be needlessly crazy and complicated and just weird incentives. Not weird, very like clear incentives that are just around profit.
Yeah. Dude, that just happened to us. Happened to us. Yeah. Because my wife is pregnant right now, and we got blood tests done to like test all the levels with the baby, make sure baby's healthy. And we got a bill back, a high bill. And it was like, oh, yeah, and your insurance isn't going to cover it. And my wife looked it up online and it was like, oh, there's a private pay rate that's $200, like way less than this hospital bill we just received. So my wife calls in and she's like, hey, I saw that there's a private pay rate of $200 for the service. Can we just private pay? And they were like, well, no, you submitted your insurance. And she was like, no, I didn't submit my insurance. And she said, well, the hospital did on your behalf. And she was like, okay, well, take it back, fax it back to them. Like, I want to private pay it. I don't want to go through insurance. So yeah, that just happened with us, and it is a very real thing.
It's crazy, man.
They forced us. They were like, sorry, it's already done now. We submitted it through your insurance. And I kind of get it because now it applies towards our insurance deductible, our max out of pocket, all of that stuff. And I guess it'd be gaming the system if you went against it, but brutal out here, man.
Yeah.
I hate it.
It makes you wonder that it's just like, I mean, that's what that guy said in the call. He was like, so I should just not have insurance. Cause like I pay these like premiums every month. I tried to like plan ahead and get this just in case. So it like helps because it's supposed to help with healthcare costs. And then now you're telling me I would actually pay less and not pay those premiums if I just didn't have insurance. It's like, how is that not the better option? So it just seems like things are getting kind of wonkier and wonkier with the way that insurance pays out, wanting everyone to go in network, the way all these like healthcare corporations are responding to it. And not just our type of stuff of like treatment centers, which are small compared to like giant hospital systems, that they've got huge billing departments that's like all they focus on is just getting as much money as possible, and then I heard someone talking about it the other day that it's like one of the only things that you just don't know what you're going to pay. Like there's no just clear cost for something. It's just like, well, a Tylenol pill in this hospital costs $2 and a Tylenol pill in this hospital costs $13.
Yeah.
And if you have this insurance, it costs $7, and this one insurance, it's free. And it's just, it makes me feel like, and I know it can be kind of cynical, but it makes me feel like the same thing. And I know total tangent, but like the tax system of like, it's just seems to be like purposely so complicated that like the average person couldn't understand it. And it's just like, all right, I'll just pay the bill, and it's only if you're like super savvy and really understand all the ins and outs that you can kind of win in the system. And I feel like taxes, you could probably win more if you have a really good accountant and who really knows what they're doing. Whereas insurance, it kind of doesn't really seem like there's any way to like beat it or do better or anything. It's just everything is kind of upside down and crazy, and you don't know what you're going to pay. Cause like I have insurance and I feel like I never have a clue what I'm going to pay. Yeah. And they're just like, we'll send you a bill in the mail. And then you get it and you're like, well, that's different than what it was last time. And like both of them were my kids' same like checkup appointment. You would think it'd be the same cost. But for this one, it's different. For that one, it's different. I have no idea why. It's like crazy terminology. And I mean, we know it from being in the field that like, PHP, IOP, PPO, HMO. It's like all this stuff that like, who knows what all this stuff means?
Yeah.
Make stuff
up on purpose.
I think so, for sure.
You do it on purpose. This is another. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's just so complicated to where you're like, all right, dude, just here's my money. I'll just pay the bill because like I don't even know what's going on, and it seems like I can't wrap my head around it. And I feel like that it is this like purposeful like fatigue that they inflict on you. That's just like wears you down to the point that you're just like, all right, I'll just pay.
Yeah. Yeah. Another crazy story is I had this happen with a dermatologist, but I called the dermatologist trying to get an appointment. They were like, sorry, like we can't take any more clients. And I was trying to rush in there. And I was like, okay. And she was like, oh, what insurance do you have? And I was like, oh, I'm just going to private pay. My insurance doesn't work at the dermatologist. And she was like, oh, well, I think we do have a 4 p.m. available today. It's like, wait, you found out I'm a private pay patient. So now like you reserve a certain number of slots for those that can just come in whenever they want. That was interesting. And that could be totally made up. Maybe they did have a recent cancellation. I don't know. It was just suspicious.
Yeah. And we bill out of network insurance. And so then we kind of have to play some of that same stupid game with like, all right, like because like we don't get to know as the people that are going to bill, not being in network, we're like, this could pay out well. And like, we could get like around our private pay rate, or a lot of times it's like, it's going to pay out way less than our private pay rate. And then you have to negotiate agreements that, we reserve the right to balance bill you at the end. Otherwise, we have to collect it all up front. And we try not to do that, to just overload a family right coming into our program with just a huge bill. So it's like, let's see if what we can get from insurance, hopefully get everything to make us whole, and then not have to balance bill you anything on the back end. But so it just makes things so complicated, and it feels like they do it on purpose. Not to mention, right, then the whole idea of like pay to patient and that whole system where it's like, if you're at a network, then we're going to pay to patient. So somebody who comes to our program receives services. When reimbursements start to go out, they don't go to us, the facility, who's technically billing them. They go straight to the patient, who then needs to forward that check over to us, again, unless we collect it all up front, which just a lot of people can't do. And so now somebody who maybe they've been graduated from our program for 2-3 months or something, it's now on them to mail that check, and the check's made out to them. It's not like it's made out to us and then they send it. And here's the most suspicious part of it, where it just feels like a leverage tool, is they say, oh, that system sucks, huh? Well, if you go in network with us, then we'll pay you directly.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's just like a leverage tool to just make it like purposely difficult for us to get paid, just so that you can lord over this idea of going in network, of like, hey, wouldn't have to do that if you went in network, then we just pay you directly. Where it's like, what's the difference? What would make it different?
Yeah.
Other than it's just a leverage tool to get us to go in network. I really don't understand what would be the difference. I'm sure they have an explanation. I've just never heard it, but why would that be different? Why would that be the case? It's the same service for the same person, billing the same insurance. Whether it's in or out of network, you either pay them and they have to pay us, or you just pay us directly.
Yeah. I was gonna make that same point of just how crazy I feel, because I'm the one that has these conversations with the families, with the moms, with the dads about insurance and billing on an out of network basis. And they're like, oh, well, what's my insurance going to pay? And it's like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gamble. We're going to talk about it as we go through it. But at least with our families, I try to give them the worst case scenario on the front end, so that there are no surprise bills, anything like that.
But even still, it just sucks, because it's like, that's such a confusing time to go through. You're looking at different programs. You're thinking, am I going to go here? Am I going to go there? All the costs are confusing. And you have you explaining, hey, this is worst case scenario. This is what it could look like. And maybe some people write that down, put it in a save file for later. But most people, that's just kind of lost in the shuffle of all this information coming at them, let alone all the stuff about the program. Oh, my son's also coming to your sober living. Do I need to pack a toothbrush? What do visits look like? When can he work? How often can he call me? Like all that stuff that I feel like matters a lot more to parents than how much it's going to cost and what it's going to be on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I feel like it is just purposely complicated.
Yeah. That was a major side quest we just went down. I want to go back to the documentary I was telling you about, that was on Netflix, about selling and buying, and but there were 5 rules within it. So the first one was sell more. Figure out a way to sell more. And it says corporations don't just meet demand, they manufacture it. Like they make it easy for you to keep buying. Then rule number 2 is waste more. Intentionally design short lifespans to drive repeat purchases, which is kind of what the in-network treatment industry is. It's like this 30, 60-day model that doesn't work. Eventually they spit them back out. Relapse happens. The success rate isn't high. They come back in, and it's just a revolving door. And you'll hear that term in our industry a lot, like, oh, that's a revolving door place. Rule number 3 was lie more. And this kind of falls into, well, really anything. They're talking about products, saying greenwashing and deceptive marketing are used to obscure environmental harm. But even in our industry, I mean, people lie to say that their product is more than what it is. Rule number 4 was hide more. Corporate operations are structured to conceal the real consequences of waste, or the real data, the real numbers that are being pulled. And rule number 5 was control more. through massive financial influence, corporations shape public discourse and consumer behavior, effectively controlling regulation and narrative. And those 5 rules just keep that cycle churning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a scary thing. I mean, it's not just in our industry. Another industry I've heard about it, a lot of this in lately, is the chocolate industry. I know you know Mr. Beast, but he's trying to create this chocolate that is made with no child labor when all other chocolate in the world is.
Mm-hmm.
Another popular company that tried to do this was Tony's. I don't know if you've ever seen the chocolate bars that say Tony's on them.
Yeah, I get them sometimes.
Yeah. And they haven't even been able to completely stop it, but they'll at least admit it. They'll say like, hey, we caught child labor happening on this many of our farms this year through their audits. So they'll at least call it how they see it and admit it when they catch it. Mr. Beast, he's on a tear to do it with no child labor. So it's in every industry. It's in the clothes you wear. It's in the chocolate we eat. It's in addiction treatment. Like when people know that there's money to be made in a facility or in a business, they can get their hands on it and take it to a whole new level. I just find harm when it's people's lives. Like, I guess I'm more okay with it if it's a Lululemon shirt, and I get that I'm a part of the problem of waste and pollution on this earth, or a new pair of On Cloud shoes. For some reason, products strike me a little differently than people do.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to helping a human being, I don't know. It just strikes a nerve with me to let like some outside insurance company call the shots when they're not in the day-to-day with that human being and hearing and feeling what they actually need to heal.
Well, and really caught between 2 big things: insurance companies and like private equity firms, that are buying a lot of these programs up. And it's like, that's who's like really calling the shots from like a top-down perspective. And again, there's good people at the bottom and even middle management and even some directors of places. I'm like not trying to dog those people or anything like that. But I think that it's also interesting that when they buy these places, they keep the same name. And like, you can look it up. I mean, because it's publicly disclosed once that something big that big happens. But that almost reminds me of like, instead of the greenwashing that you're talking about, where like, oh, it's organic and
you can recycle it.
You can recycle it, blah, 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 and stuff that's like not like really entirely true or makes you think something, just because organic's like a buzzword that everyone wants to see. But then you look into what that actually means and maybe it's not exactly what you think. But I feel like in like the recovery world, it's like reputation washing. And it's like, all right, let's find this small niche mom and pop shop that everybody trusts and knows, and then we'll buy it. Not a lot of people will know that we bought it. Then we'll start implementing all of our stuff. So we kind of just like bought the reputation of this like good place, because if it was blah, 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 private equity law firm recovery, probably not a lot of people are going there. And even if it's so-and-so corporation, medical corporation, recovery center, probably not a lot of people are going there. But when it's, and I don't even want to throw out any names because I'm not trying to put anyone under the bus, whatever. But, Greenville Transitions, that just doesn't sound like a place that's owned by some private equity firm or a healthcare corporation or whatever. But technically we could sell to one of those people. They could sell to someone else. And then we like by proxy are owned by them. While someone else thinks, oh, I went to that place 5 years ago. I know those guys, David and Lucas. They're good people. Oh, they're actually not there anymore. Oh, that's a shame. They were good. Who's there now? Oh, this guy. Okay, well, I mean, that sounds good. If you guys over there, I'll go there. So it's like you really get to like buy people's like reputation and goodwill, which is just interesting as to why someone would want to do that. And I get that it's tougher to start something than it is to just buy it if you have the money and snatch it up. But to your earlier point, private equity firm is only going to do that because it's profitable. And I think even further than that, I don't think just because it's profitable, I think they see that it could even profit more if they made some changes.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to throw in there too that I've been on the inside of this. I've worked for a company who got bought out by and this was a substance use disorder place company that I was working for that got bought out by one of these big firms. And they also tell the staff, like, oh, but we're going to keep it under this name. We're not going to change anything. We're going to let you guys operate the way you've been operating because you're so good at this. You're doing such good work. They come in telling you that, and then give it 6 months, give it a year, everything changes. They start making cuts left and right to cut cost and profit more. And it just gets nasty. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah. And that's where you worked and where I went through and got sober,
Yeah.
and I was there in the middle of, I mean, I think it was
A buyout.
the second acquisition they had. And that place that like saved my life, that was like, at the time I went there, strictly private pay. They maybe gave you like a super bill that you could file with your insurance, but it kind of was, you're not really going to get much. And I watched it change years after that. And it went under maybe 2 years later, 2.5, maybe 3 years tops. It was under, and all of a sudden they started taking insurance. They shortened the program. Like all the magic of that program that helped me get sober was sucked out of it. And before you know it, it wasn't profitable enough and it shut down. And I feel like they just kind of murdered it.
Yeah.
Like they really just like ruined this like really great program that changed my life and other people that I know that went there. There's even still a Facebook group of that program of people who like check in.
Nah, yeah.
Yeah.
One more really sad thing to me is that I feel like because that model is so profitable and people are seeing that, oh, we can make big money here, we can sell out, we can move on, they're opening up everywhere. Like it is becoming the go-to model to make it, and it makes it harder to see the out of network, the private pay facilities, the longer term facilities, the ones that have been around for a while are kind of getting buried underneath all of these in-network, huge facilities, big treatment conglomerates that have thousands and thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to throw every month toward SEO and digital marketing. They're just kind of, if it were an ocean, they're kind of taking over. They're the big fish taking over that ocean, and it's making it harder to see. Yeah, I mean, every year I hear about more and more of us, the smaller mom and pop shops, closing up because I don't think people know the difference. I think what it is a lack of education. When parents start to look into this, no parent thinks that they're going to run into this issue. I think every parent is like, oh, addiction, that's not going to be a thing with us, or they're hoping that it's not. But then when it happens, they're like, what the hell do we do? How do we navigate this? And who are they going to see first? They're going to see they go to Google, you type in, they're going to see the big treatment conglomerate that has 40 locations all over the globe. And they're owned by a huge company that's throwing, like I said, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars toward marketing. So best advice that I could give you if you're a family member watching this podcast is to like hop on an AI powered software, hop on ChatGPT or Meta, whatever, and type in who owns this place. And if you get an answer, you can even go a step further and say, well, then who owns them? And see how far up the ladder it'll take you. But I can promise you, if you get too high up that ladder and it's too big of a company, they aren't looking out for the best interest of whoever you're sending there. Maybe the therapist is. I'm not saying that the people working on ground level are bad. I think that they have great intentions. There's a reason they picked that field to work in. Their heart's probably in the right place, but there's someone higher up whose wallet is way ahead of their heart.
Yeah, for sure. And those people on the bottom floor, I mean, in a lot of ways, their hands are tied by policies or, guidelines or whatever that company has imposed on them from above. Of like, yeah, I know you want to work with this guy an extra 5 days, but insurance isn't going to do it, or not 5 days, but let's say an extra 30 days. You really think that's going to make a difference? Insurance says no, see ya, and that's that. So I think that it's just a huge bummer, man.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Is there anything else to cover there? You think? Anything else families would need to know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only other thing I'd say for families to know, just because we like tested it, and obviously we're biased and we believe in our program and love it and live in it every day and all that. But I remember when we looked up like even Greenville, gosh, I typed in what's the best recovery place for my son to go in Greenville. And I think we didn't even show up on the list. And then I typed in specifically a program specifically for young men. And then we were at the top of the list. So I feel like a lot of stuff of like how you Google, like if you just Google treatment center Greenville, you're going to get whoever dumped the most money into SEO. And that means they have the most money behind them. And that doesn't mean that they're the best program. Doesn't
And they
mean
could
that
be in Nashville, Tennessee.
yeah. Doesn't mean they're the best quality. Doesn't mean anything other than that they just dumped way more money into SEO than everyone else. And I think we have this feeling in our minds, at least I do, that like when I type something in on Google, whatever the most apt best thing is going to be at the top. And we all know now of like, okay, ad, you go to you go to the one beneath all the ad sponsored, and that one you're like, okay, that's got to be the best one. But it really is just who spent the most on SEO. And you could see that as a proxy for like, all right, if they spent the most on SEO, that's because they're the most profitable because they have the best product and sell the most of it. So I'm going to go with that. Like that makes sense too. I just think, like you said, when it comes down to recovery services, that may not always be true. That might be different than chocolate bars or Lululemon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just being really specific with like what you're looking for and what's the best for your specific loved one, not just anyone's loved one. Because if it's good for anyone's loved one or everyone's loved one, is it? You know?
Yeah. Good point. And if, go ahead.
I was going to say that's it for my rant.
Yeah. Well, and if this was helpful, hearing us talk through this, the podcast right before this one, the episode right before, is a podcast of good questions to ask as you're entering a treatment center or a sober living program. So I'd also refer back to that one too. As you're getting ready to make that decision, it's a extremely helpful list of questions for you to ask that can help you down this journey, because it's a tough journey to navigate. And they don't make a lot of handbooks for it, do they?
No, none. You got to really make your own handbook.
Cool. Well, that's all we have for today.
That's it.
And that's the pod.
Bazinga.